Fireballs. 7 years ago, me and my family were walking to my home. It was like 10 to 11 p.m. at night, and we saw three fireballs dancing over the forest. With dancing, I'm just jumping over the trees like they were playing. In that moment, obviously we were very freaked out, so we didn't take pictures and we only walked faster to get home. I took a screenshot. Those things weren't fire, I know. This isn't the only time that I saw something like that. 2 years ago, I saw something similar, but was only a single one. This time that thing wasn't moving. At first glance, it seemed like a forest fire, but then when I saw this thing for a second time, the fire doesn't grow up, and in that moment I knew that I need to get home. I was really scared that second time because although it sounds like a horror movie, I was walking alone in the middle of the night. In my country, Mexico, there's a legend about these things. We'll believe that these fireballs are witches. We don't know how, but they can turn their body into those fireballs. You can hear more stories like this from people that live in small towns like this around Mexico. But almost all people believe that it's bullshit to scare little kids. Sincerely, I also think it sounds stupid, and I wasn't believing that shit until I saw those things on my own. In your country, exist myths or legends like this? I think that probably those things were aliens instead of witches, but I'm better without knowing. Have you experienced something like that? Let me know in the comments, please. Mysterious note found in dilapidated house. So many years ago in our town, there was an elderly woman living on her own in a house near the market. One morning at around 6 to 7 a.m., a fire broke out in her house, killing her and destroying her house completely. It was a very strange and scary event, but many didn't think much of it because the woman was of very old age, and the fire most likely started due to a stove she left on during the night. I was 6 years old back then, so I was still a child, but I remember my grandma and I going to the open air market to buy fruit and vegetables, and walking past the house, which was completely scorched, from the walls to the furniture, etc. I was very scared of it at the time. However, as I was walking past it, there were newspapers scattered all over the sidewalk outside the burnt down house. There was also, among many, a piece of paper, which I picked up and put in my pocket. Don't ask me why, because I don't know myself, but bear in mind that I was just a little kid and I guess I was curious. Anyways, after that, I don't remember whether I read the content of the paper or not, but I remember putting it in my drawer and hiding it there for many years. Then, me and my best friend made a memory box, an idea we got from a movie, which included some photos, diary entries, coins, and banknotes from that decade, as well as personal belongings. I put that piece of paper there. We were planning on burying the box in our park and excavating it many years later, like a time capsule of some sort. However, it started raining, and that entire week consisted of bad weather, so we decided not to sit around in the mud and left it at my place. Well, weeks passed, and we just forgot about the box, and eventually stayed in my room. Today, I was cleaning out my room, and as I was dusting the area behind my cupboard, there it was. Miraculously, it fit in that tiny space between the cupboard and the wall, and remained there for almost a decade. Like I said, I forgot about it, and since that space is pretty unreachable, no one bothered cleaning it. I opened it and I almost started crying. So many memories came to mind, childhood memories and bliss. For some reason though, the diary entries were missing. I don't know why, but they just disappeared, even though me and my best friend remember putting them there vividly. That weirded me out a lot. But what's important here is the piece of paper I found outside of that burnt house 10 years ago. It was still there, and I finally read it. It was, of course, in worn out condition, since it was part of a fire, but its content was still pretty legible. It had the numbers 44.788.417-106.992470 and simply the letters MEV written on it. At first, I was very confused as to what that message meant, but I figured out that the numbers were actually coordinates. Looking them on Google, they directed me towards a road outside of a small town in Wyoming, USA called Sheridan. As to what the initials MEV meant, I have no idea. Why were there coordinates in Wyoming? Even though we were kilometers upon kilometers away, what happened to the diary entries that used to be inside of the box? And what does MEV even mean? What are your theories on this weird case? My friend and I are planning on going to that house there. It was burnt up, but it just got repainted, so that the scorch marks are gone, but it's still abandoned. We'll make sure to keep you guys updated, although by the time this uploads, we will have probably already gone there. Updates. My BFF and I went to the house mentioned. Unfortunately, we didn't find anything, but someone caught us and asked what we were doing there. I told him that we were looking for clues and asked if he knew anything about the elderly lady who used to live there before the fire. He seemed to be in his late 50s, plus I knew he works in a bakery that I've seen many times before around there, so I assumed that he would tell us if he knew anything. He said that her name was Alexandra, and she used to be his neighbor. She lost her son in a car crash 3 years prior to the house incident, and after that, she became ill. She suffered from deep depression and sometimes even memory loss. One time, she even forgot where her home was, so she had to get help from the man I mentioned to get her back to her house. So, she most likely just forgot to turn off her stove and fell asleep, ultimately starting a fire. At least that's what he thinks, since he never found out the exact reason. Now, I asked him if she had any connection to Wyoming, but he didn't know. She could have relatives, but no one really knows. I also asked what MEV means, but he also does not know that either. He assumed that it was from a book she had. Maybe she had an entire library of them in her house. Most of them became ash, but me and my friend saw some hardcover books lying around on a table. Maybe I should search them, but at this point, I don't think I'm willing to go back there, nor is my friend. We just felt uneasy while exploring the abandoned house. I can't really explain the feeling. What do you guys think? A childhood memory of mine. This story I'm about to tell you is my own experience, and I know that some of you will not believe me, so here it goes. I lived in a small town in Louisiana at the time. I was 12 or 13 years old, and my interest was like every other kid, which video games and other things, so I never got into trouble really. We lived in a small house, and like most, they tend to make noises of the such, so I never paid it no mind. This one night I'll never forget. I was playing my GameCube and it was late, like 2:30 in the morning on a school night, kinda late, and I heard someone call my name. I froze in my chair and I turned to look behind me, and of course there was no one there. I continued playing and I heard it again, but this time it was distant, almost like it was in another part of the house. I get up and go investigate, and I open my door and walk out into the hallway. I close my door behind me and make my way to the living room, frustrated because this is killing my time on completing Zelda. So I leave, and that's when I heard my front door shut. I stop and look at my front door. My front door has a pane window with a curtain, so I look through that window to see this little girl out in the middle of my yard. I open the door and step out and make my way to the little girl, ready to comfort her for being in. When the clouds cover the little bit of moonlight outside, I strain to see if I can catch a silhouette of her, but she was gone. The clouds move away, leaving me with some light again. I was confused. I didn't know what to do, and if I saw it was real or fake. I make halfway across my yard when I heard it again, my name. I look behind me and look up in the tree, and there she was, sitting on one of the highest branches. She stood up, giggled a little, and jumped off the branch towards me, and I froze with fear. About halfway down, I watched her disappear, and the only thing remained after that was a laugh she was making as she jumped from the branch. I ran inside to immediately and cut my lights out and jumped in bed. I haven't told anyone this story until now, and I feel like I just had to share it because this was one of the most craziest nights of my entire life. Something happened to me in the woods. Okay, to start and give some backstory, this happened 5 years ago when I was 11 years old. My memory is a little cloudy, and sorry for the shit writing and explaining in advance. I just been put in foster care and moved 3 hours away from my hometown to a small town west of Canada. The house was just off the highway, and there wasn't anything for miles but woods. Anyways, I've been living there for a few months, and I got really close with the other girl living there. She was 2 years older than me, but we got along really well. I'll call her Kat for the sake of the story. And the foster parents were nice too, I guess. So, it was the summer of 1-3, and we would often go to a lake called One Eye Lake. How ominous. It was a 30-minute walk, and we would have to cross the highway to get to it, but truth be told, we were bored of going to the lake every single day, and we didn't have really much else to do. We weren't allowed to use the internet or watch TV for more than an hour, so we were at a loss. Naturally, I got a bright idea. You see, across the highway, there was a big wooded area enclosed by fences, and when we walked to the lake along the path, the fences would surround us, and I would often get a glance into the woods, and from what I saw, it was always looking beautiful, and oddly, I had always had a strange childish desire to explore it. It took a lot of begging on my end to try and get Kat to go along with it. She was apprehensive, and I couldn't understand why, but after a few minutes of my annoyingness, she agreed, but with the condition, we brought one of the big dogs with us. There were two big dogs, Sammy and Ozzy. Ozzy and I had grown a bond over the course of me being there. The dogs belonged to young son and daughter of our foster parents, but we rarely interacted with them, so I secretly thought of Ozzy as my dog and I loved him dearly. It was funny when anyone called him, he would just look at them, but when I called him, he would come running to me. This is important, but today before he left, I called Ozzy to come with us, but he was nowhere to be seen, but I didn't think too much of it, as he would sometimes be swimming in the pond near the pool to cool off, and so we brought Sammy with us instead. So we told Sarah, our foster mother, that we were going to the lake. I'm not sure why we lied. I think it was because deep down we knew that we were not supposed to venture into those woods, though never verbally told. It was more of an unwritten rule, I guess, so to speak. So, we cross the highway and get on the other side of the fence. I stare into the woods for a moment, anticipation building inside me like I was embarking on some mystical friggin' adventure. I looked, but can't see more than 20 feet ahead of me due to all the trees. But what I can see, and I'll never forget, how beautiful it looked with the sun shining through the trees. It looked so welcoming. Kat looked nervous. I remember looking at her, and she was doing the same as I was before, peering into the woods. I hit her with my hand, and she snaps out of it and laughs nervously, telling me, "You go first." I couldn't understand why she seemed so scared, but I gladly hopped the waist-length wooden fence, and as soon as my feet hit the ground on the other side, the air seemed well. How do I explain this? The air was different. It wasn't what I imagined at all. The sun didn't seem to shine down as strong in here as it seemed to before, and it was much more cold. It was summertime, but it was somehow chillier across the fence. Kat hopped the fence and joined me on the other side, and she gave me a weird look before he tried calling Sammy, but he just stared at us with his big puppy eyes unmoving. We even called him with a promise of treats, yet he still wouldn't budge. I should have took this as a sign, but I was still so keen on exploring the woods. I tell Kat we should just go, that he'll be fine, and she seems like she just wants to leave but goes along with it, and we begin walking into the woods. I distinctly remember thinking at the time how weirdly quiet it was. There were no birds singing, no wisps of the air, just eerie quiet. We walked for a bit, neither of us really talking, but I kept looking back to make sure Sammy was there, and when we did, he would be staring at us from behind the fence. We keep walking until we couldn't see the dog anymore, and suddenly Kat stops me with her arm, and I ask what's up. She points down without a word, and on the ground was a skull that I was about to step on. I'm not sure if this is important to the story, but I thought it was odd considering. I crouched down to get a better look at it. It definitely wasn't human, maybe a deer, I don't know. Kat didn't know either, and at the time, she was acting very anxious, saying she had a bad feeling and wanted to leave, but my dumb ass self protested with, "We just got here, we can't leave yet." I really regret staying. We walked further into the woods, and I stopped to examine a few pine cones. I don't know why, I was 11, okay? When I turned to show one to Kat, she wasn't there, she was gone. I stand up and think she's playing a joke on me. I call her name, and only after a minute, when she doesn't answer, do I begin to get scared. I stood there alone, fear washing over me, and a disturbing feeling came on like a slap in the face, almost like I was being watched. I won't lie, the feeling was enough to make me consider running home, but I continued calling Kat's name, thinking she went deeper into the forest without me. I walked for I don't know how long, calling her name when I saw purple, which was odd for the normal, earthy tones of the woods, and I remember Kat's purple sweater and I rushed towards it. I ran, seeing Kat lying face first on the ground. I was relieved to say the least, but that soon turned to worry. What the fuck was she doing lying there? Why didn't she answer me? I rushed to her and I soon noticed the blood not on her, but on a fairly large rock near her. I pushed Kat, trying to wake her up. At this point, I was sobbing. I seriously thought she was dead. I used all my strength to roll her dead weight over and onto her back. I saw a small gash on her forehead that was bleeding a lot, and I quickly put my ear to her chest, and I heard her heart beat. This is probably the most relieved I've ever felt in my 16 years of life. I continued to sob so fucking loud, slumped on the ground next to Kat, because I was so traumatized after thinking she was dead, and because I honestly just wanted to go home. The forest had been all too quiet aside from my crying, but I heard a twig snap and I stopped crying all at once. My body goes still and I forget to breathe altogether. The sound couldn't have been more than 15 feet away. I slowly look around and there is nothing but trees, and my mind immediately comes to the conclusion it's a bear. They were well known in this area, and our foster parents would tell us to always bring bear spray when we walked to the lake. We forgot today. But then another sound, this time a pain moan. I looked down and Kat had woken up, and she's not even completely coherent yet. But I whispered, telling her we need to go. I pulled her up slowly and put her arm around my neck. She's still pretty out of it and leans all her weight on me, making it very hard to walk, but I make it work with my strength I have, and we move very slowly. By this point, all I'm thinking is about getting Kat home safely and how guilty I feel about making her come with me on this stupid childish adventure. We walk for a bit, and I'm almost certain we're halfway to the fence when another noise makes its way into our ears. This time, it's a voice. I stupidly stop, and luckily Kat's now fully lucid, and we both try to listen. At first, it's a quiet noise, like a growl of a drained-out K. Then it gets louder. It sounds forced and rough, almost staticky. It sends chills down my spine, but all I can do at this moment is to listen. I'm not sure how to explain the sound in a way that makes sense, but try to imagine the way a child spells something out loud. Then the sound I will never forget is, "Kat, where are you?" It's my voice, but it doesn't sound right. More like a static-filled, distorted recording. I'm getting chills just writing this down, but after we heard that, we got the fuck out of there, screaming bloody murder, not looking back. More voices. My voice called us to us as we ran. "Kat, it's not funny. Seriously, where are you?" All the things I yelled earlier when I was looking for Kat were seemingly being played back, but it was so loud, so much louder than any recording, unless there were giant speakers in the forest at which I was not aware of. We got to the fence, but Sammy wasn't there, and we both jumped over that fence at superhuman speed and ran home matching pace. When we got home, Sammy was back luckily, Ozzy still wasn't. We went to the clinic in town after telling our foster parents Kat tripped on our way home from the lake. Kat had gotten a mild concussion and had to get 3 stitches above her eyebrow. We didn't tell anyone what happened because we were so freaked out we didn't even talk about it between the two of us. But about 2 years ago, I had long since left that house, and so had Kat, but this memory still haunts me. Kat and I didn't stay in touch until I randomly found her on Facebook. We began messaging back and forth when the conversation began about that day, and she finally opened up with the real reason she left me alone that day in the woods. She explained she saw something, a shadow of something behind a tree, a few feet from an oblivious 11-year-old me, looking at pine cones, and it moved behind a tree. When she laid eyes on it like it had been caught staring, she told me she didn't know what it was, but it wasn't any kind of animal she had ever seen in her life. She described it as tall and standing on its back legs, like a human almost 8 feet. It was slim and had brownish-gray matted fur, so it could not have been a bear. She said she ran not thinking and ended up running in the wrong way when she tripped and got knocked out. She apologized over and over for leaving me, and I said it was fine. I was a little upset, but honestly, I'm just glad we got out of there. Now, I've been thinking maybe there really was someone in the forest with us playing a prank, but it's unlikely. We were truly in the middle of nowhere. In one direction of the highway, we had a neighbor, but they were an old couple and were over 20 minutes by car. And in the other direction was the nearest town, 30 minutes by car. And after 5 years, I don't know what was in the woods with us that day. I've done some research and have a few ideas, but like to hear other people's opinions. And I have other experiences while at home, but you best believe I'm dumb, but not dumb enough to ever go to the woods again.